when you watch something that makes you mad, that's already what happened. That's the goal of it, and it's to keep your eyes on. Because when you watch something bad, it makes you mad, it makes you stay there. That's exactly the point. So the majority of the news is 99% bullshit. I have a few ideas that I want to discuss with you in this video of why that is and how I spot it instantly and how you may spot it instantly as well. Have you ever heard the phrase, if it bleeds, it leads? That's kind of what we're talking about when I look at the news. I find out the more I take in, the less I understand. And that doesn't make sense to me. But it starts to, because if the news was really meant to inform, like it was whenever I grew up in the 70s, 80s, maybe even into the 90s before it started getting a little wonky, if it was meant to inform like it was then, you wouldn't need so much drama, so many things on the screen, so many dramatic stories that feel like they should affect you at the core. We have to try to mellow through this and look at what's going on. The news isn't really news as much as it's entertainment anymore. It's not stupid or evil inherently. It's just incentivized to be shallow. Now, there's a lot in that little sentence there. It's incentivized to be shallow. I'm going to talk about these couple ways and I'll jump straight into them so you understand my perspective and see if it correlates to what you think as well. The first thing I want to talk about is it uses moral panic as a business model. It needs that. Have you noticed every decade you're alive that you take in the news, there's some dramatic thing that's going to happen that changes the entire society. It destroys society from the inside out. One thing that reminds me, of course, in 2020 was COVID. In the 2000s, it was 9/11. And just the whole war on terror. The tens and the teens, I'm not exactly sure. Maybe you can leave a comment and let me know what the big overarching theme was then. But I do think that moral panic is a business model. And with that, outrage is the product. It's not news, it's not the story, it's outrage. And it's not the event. Outrage isn't the event, it's the product, because that's what news is. It's a business versus information, journalism. Those businesses are paid by advertisers to have you watch. And the longer you watch, the more they make. Now, I don't know if you've ever noticed that if you read a headline and it makes you mad, you feel a thing in you that gets on your nerves or it makes you think things about certain people or certain groups, that means you already bought that. You know, they already won when you watch something that makes you mad. That's already what happened. That's the goal of it. And it's to keep your eyes on, because when you watch something bad, it makes you mad, it makes you stay there. That's exactly the point. If you just want to think of it in more day-to-day terms, have you ever been just driving on the highway and you see an accident? A lot of people do the same reaction. Whenever you see an accident, you don't just say, oh, wow, somebody had an accident. I'm sorry to hear about that. And you keep on going about your day. I'll just see what happened on the news. I'm not going to stop and hold up traffic behind me and gawk at this thing as I pass, and you just keep on looking until it's out of view. It's gawker delays. That's what they call it. When the traffic backs up, the accident's off the road. It's just people stopping to look at it. News companies know this, advertisers know this, and they put that on the screen to make you continue to watch, and that's where that problem starts. They don't really cover the story. They don't really talk about what happened. They just show you the outrage and they move on to the next thing. And it's very trappy. It catches you in a groove and you start to think that sort of thing. I think a problem is basically that there's a moral panic as a business model that companies use, and the outrage is the product. The other big deal that happens is the 24-hour news cycle. When I grew up, news came on at 11 o'clock. Every day you had one news station, news report, half hour long, came on 11 o'clock. That's it. Shortly after that, the TV went off. Not because somebody's parents or grandparents said, that's enough TV, it's time for you to go to bed, and shut the TV off. No, it stopped broadcasting. A little bit later, we started to see a morning rush hour news, a lunchtime news, and then a drive home, an evening commute news. in addition to that 11 o'clock news. So it went from one news report a day to three or four. I'm pretty sure it was about four. And you're starting to think, how much more stuff can we report? We get the news every day. And I don't know how you can find news four times. Life's not that exciting in the day-to-day sense. I mean, it is. A lot of things happen, but they only report bad stories because if it bleeds, it leads. The goal is to get you to watch. So then cable comes out and hundreds of channels come out. Now there are complete channels, stations, businesses that are news stations, which means 24-hour access to news. What in the hell can happen different from one time a day that you can just tell us what happened today? Possibly what may be happening in the near future. To four different times you're giving us news. Now you can be sitting down, clicking through the channels, and come across the news station that only does news all day, every day. And have you looked at the stations? It's all flat. Breaking news, breaking news. A banner running across the street to tell you how many people got killed at a certain event, a music event, a school, a church, synagogue, something. It's all bad and it's nonstop. One of the issues, there's a ton of issues I have with this. One of them is when you put out that many stories, it seems like every 5 minutes they have to tell you a new thing happened, a new breaking subject, something. Really? Something happened again? I've been watching this for 20 minutes. Four times you broke some news. But it's never good news. It's never, this girl walked home from school today all by herself for the first time. She was 7 years old. Nothing happened. She made it. It was amazing. Her neighborhood is excellent. There's no crime over there and there's nothing worth worrying about. You don't hear that story. Nobody watches that. If it's on the internet somewhere, nobody's going to click on that. Because there's no blood, there's no drama, there's no fear. Fear. So many videos I'll be making here are going to talk about keeping us in fear. Good stories don't last long. They have to come on and say, here's an example of something that would happen. Breaking news. A construction worker, Spencer, stole a car in downtown Pittsburgh. The story goes on to the news, and then it goes on to the internet. And meanwhile, everybody's sharing the story. And so this news company, this outfit, this business is making money hand over fist every time you share it. The comment section, the crowd, the people who read the story, watched the story, or saw the story are now commenting on this Spencer who stole this car. Of course he did. Look at him. You know, that's all they do. They don't take accountability for themselves. This is what they do. You couldn't think anything less. Of course he stole it. By the time I get home from work and I see the news, and I see it's me. I'm like, I didn't steal this car. What are you talking about? This is my car. Here's the title. This is mine. By that point, the outrage is over and they're on to the next story. I remain the bad guy no matter how much I proved that story was a complete lie. This is what they do. The first person to hit is speed over accuracy. When you have that much news coming out, and you have to get it out fast because you got to save that person from wanting to change the channel so they can watch all the advertisements, because that's who pays your salary and who pays the networks, how they make their money. That's their business model. So before, they're not going to run the apology. They're not going to run the correction. They're not going to put airtime towards the good part of the story because the crowd, the watchers, me and you have already decided, yep, he's bad. He fits the mold. And that's how they keep going over and over. It's a horrible way to run, but I kind of look at the news as it's not news. They might call it that. It is entertainment. And we are entertained by bad stuff. I'm guilty myself. I watch true crime drama on YouTube more than is even necessary for one person to watch. I also like drama, but I have trained myself to take in news stories and say, breaking news, bombs over Baghdad. Trump gave a speech to a group of 17-year-old kids. Like, okay, here's how I disseminate that. That would suck if that was true. Done. I'll check back in a few days and see if anything's built up on it or if it went anywhere. But I'm not taking that first news story as gospel because they are just spitting out stories and they're throwing shit against the wall to see what sticks. So you have to make sure that you keep mind of that and don't let that destruct you from the inside out. It's terrible on your body, starts in your heart, it goes to your brain, it messes your mind. All of us are backing it up with comments and based on our biases, regardless of what the facts of the story are. We have to be able to separate the entertainment from stuff that we take in personally. The 24-hour news cycle, I think, trashed it. So the fact that they use moral panic as a business model and outrage as a product is one horrible thing with the news that you have to keep aware of. The other one is the 24-hour news cycle. You have to be able to keep those two in mind whenever you're watching something so you don't take in all of the bad. There's a lot of bad going on. Like when I said those decades, something terrible that's going to destroy society, those stories happen, but we're okay. We have to keep that in mind. Maybe you're not okay like you're doing great or you're completely blowing life up. You're just killing the game. It might not be quite that, but we are here. You're listening to me. I'm talking to you. We're good. We can make this happen regardless of what they say. I want us to keep that in mind so we don't lose our whole thing. The overall goal isn't more news. I wish we had less news with better sources and more context to the story so you can really get under this person did this and break that open a little bit and be like, why they do that? Let's look inside there. Oh, they did it because they did. Well, let's break that up. Well, why would they be like that to have to do that? Like you keep going further down to get to the real root and you don't have as much hate for everybody that the news is projecting you to. Because take this one piece out. When you watch the news, have you ever heard somebody refer to Middle Eastern brown people as terrorists? That exact word, terrorists. Okay, so when you hear that, whatever station you're on, that's the advertiser's slant on this story. So you'll understand that everything that you hear from that channel probably has that same bit of biases in their news reporting. It has nothing to do with journalism and which side is right and fair and balanced. None of that is true. It's all about the way they term stuff will let you know who's financing the game. And it's all a game and it's all about financing and making money and nothing about making the world a better place and making it easier on people. They want to keep you flustered, in a hurry, in a tizzy, and feeling like you're in pain and fear of everybody else. Because if you're in fear of everybody else, then you start lashing out on everybody else. And when you lash out on everybody else, you compartmentalize a populace versus put us all together so we can use our power in numbers to activate something. I think it's a very insidious thing that the news does. I want the goal to be that you consume the news for entertainment and not to let it emotionally hijack you. If you can think back to a story, if you trust the news as it is today on all the stations, fine. But if you don't trust the news, what's the story and around what time period did that story happen that turned you off to the news or made you not trust it? Let me know in the comments because I'm anxious to hear. I want to read those and see what kind of things kind of threw you off. What was the big deal? All right, cool. Hey, I appreciate you sticking around to the end. I'm going to get out of here. Take care of yourself and have a good one. I'll see you later.